right, guys, welcome to Off the Mark. I'm trying to do something a little bit different on the side now, and I want to interview all you marks out there. I want to get the fans' perspective, the marks' perspective. So each week, or every so often, I'm going to try to get one of you guys out there, sit down and talk with me about professional wrestling. This week, we have none other than the Legendary Woz. That's right, Bryan Wozniak, all the way from Kansas City. Bryan, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. We had you on marked up last week. I just want to bring you back on to talk to you more in depth because I know during that show we really can't, sit down and talk to you for hours on there. So I figure let's get to know the Woes a little bit more tonight. Are you ready to talk wrestling?
Yes, I am.
Awesome, man. So I don't want to, ask the same questions to everybody, but I try to want to ask similar questions, try to get everybody's point of view because, we all grew up in different eras of wrestling. When asked what got you into professional wrestling, my biggest thing is Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, and I know that's been a big discussion in our Marks group. That's Facebook.com/group/pro wrestling marks out there if you're listening. And I always debate it, but that's like one of the biggest matches that got me into wrestling. Tell me, what's the one thing you could go back to, and maybe if you could pinpoint it, like what's the one thing you knew you became a fan? Is there anything that stands out to you?
No, I think I might have mentioned it before. I grew up in Buffalo before I moved out here, so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother's, and my cousin and I watched wrestling on her TV, and then we kind of got into the shows coming around into the old Memorial Auditorium in downtown Buffalo. And one of the first matches that I remember going to live was a boot camp match with Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik. So if anything could be a starting point, that would probably be the best one. That was a long, long time ago. So
Sure. Hey, there's always that little starting point. People remember of like their first memory, I guess you could say, in wrestling that they always go back to in a way.
Right.
Things have changed so much, so much. From that, if you look at what's happening today in the WWE or TNA or Ring of Honor or any wrestling organization, WWE stands out more because they're the dominant one. But
Yes.
things that are happening today compared to what happened in the 80s, heck, even what happened in the 90s, it's a whole different world. Is there,
Yes.
what anything happening now that's just like you love, or maybe stuff that kind of reminisces of the old times, and I don't know, anything that you just really hate, if you want to touch on both of those subjects of things that you love and things that you hate that's going on today?
Actually, I love what they did last night at the end of Raw with the Daniel Bryan thing. I don't know why they just wasted 2 weeks with it, if it was just to get Bray Wyatt over or to make people feel sympathetic to get Daniel Bryan over more. But I absolutely loved it. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times. I'd watch it with the kids because we're getting ready to go to a house show in a couple weeks, so they're kind of bummed that Daniel Bryan was no longer, as they call him, a good guy. So it gave me goosebumps, man. That's how how much I enjoyed it. And as far as anything bad that's going on, I can't really say that there's anything that's just terrible about professional wrestling that I've seen and lately, other than I have a hard time with TNA and some of the things that they do, which I've touched on before. I think they can make better decisions. And you almost like to see them do better because the way the WWE is going now, with everything that they've done with the Performance Center and NXT, and now with the new network, they're pretty much going to be a force that will probably dominate in the business for forever.
Yeah.
It's a tough one, but competition, breeds better storylines and talent exchanges and things like that. So hopefully we'll see another number 2 come up and maybe take a piece of that pie away from them.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Whatever, like I mean, TNA has it right now to where they have the television. They have that spot on TV to where it's a global. Well, I guess you could say global market, but I mean, they're on Spike TV. It's national at least, and they have this, but it's like I don't know. I don't know what they're missing or what they're trying to do, but they keep just missing out on it. I mean, like, I always give them credit for their backstage vignettes where, it's like the hidden camera feel, and it looks awesome. WWE does the whole stage lighting and the staged offices, and it's like, come on, man. It's like, you can't be serious when you're walking down a hall where it's all lit perfectly. I like the realism of their backstage vignettes, but then it's like, I don't know what happens with them, that they just fall apart on all the other parts of putting the show together. I mean, it used to be TNA, total nonstop action. Now it's just total nonstop talking, and I think they're getting killed with their storylines to where I don't know, like their whole Aces and Eights story, for example, just vanished out of a day. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they had this thing that was good, and then it just fell apart, and they just don't know how to keep the things together. But
Right.
it's a whole different world right now as a pro wrestling fan, especially when we were talking about, you just mentioned too, the whole WWE app and how that's pretty much changed. I mean, gone are the days of renting or buying VHS tapes to see what happened, somewhere in California or somewhere in Jersey. Now it's YouTube, and now with WWE, you don't even have to buy the DVDs anymore. If you want to see what happened, you could just go on it, and it's pretty much like Netflix and watch it. And that's going to be killer for a lot of companies like Ring of Honor and TNA to compete with something like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, like Ring of Honor, though, I'm on their website as a member, so I get to watch their show, online. Like last night, I watched their show last week with Kevin Steen and Chris Hero. So, I mean, they were already kind of doing that anyways. That was, that's the only way that I could watch them because they're not on TV anywhere around here. So,
Yeah, I did that too. You know what the thing with that is that you have to, I mean, there's so many things going on nowadays. Like, you have to remember to log on and watch it. It's not in your face every day. And, I mean,
right.
Especially with social media, you have Facebook updates and Twitter and all that. But, I mean, like, WWE is always is going to be in your face now with all this whole app thing, and especially on TV. They're covering all the markets all across the country. And I kind of hope our Ring of Honor gets a decent TV deal sooner or later, because I think they're just, if they come up on a decent, like a Spike TV deal like TNA is, I feel like that would bury TNA. I think they just need a decent backer, and hopefully they would be that second threat to WWE in a way. So, and that's what I wanted to touch on. I know I kind of messed around a little bit, but the whole thing with competition. Let's talk a little bit about that, and how we can go back to WCW being the main competition for WWE, and how that drove a lot of their storylines to compete with them. And now they have no competition, to where they're doing silly gimmicks like Los Matadores and the bull gimmick, and it's like, I get it that you're trying to do entertainment for kids and stuff, but this isn't like a cartoon, it's not, it's
right.
I don't know, what do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's getting too campy in a way, that it's like, since they have no competition, they're doing all these silly gimmicks?
I don't think it's as bad as it used to be, like whenever you had like the Repo Man and Akeem, the African Dream, and I mean, I understand they're gearing it towards kids, but I think there's a way you could do that with Sears performers. I mean, you could have your comic relief with like a Santino Marella, and you don't need the Los Matadores, and the little bull. I mean, it's kind of cute, but after a time, it just kind of wears itself thin, and it goes nowhere. So, it's just kind of like a little bump for your merchandising purpose, I would say. But I don't think it's as bad as it was there, like towards the 86 to 92-ish WWF, where you had just Duke the Dumpster Drosy and Repo Man, and just silliness that was going on like that.
I know, and I don't know, I feel like it's almost going back towards that in a way, to where, I mean, Santino Marella I could deal with, because he wrestles, he could do stuff, and he's funny. But then you bring out a a midget dressed as a bull, and it's just like I almost question myself, like, why am I still watching this? And then it's like it bounces back from reality with
Yeah.
CM Punk pipe bombs, and then all of a sudden you have two guys dressed as Aldo Montoya with a bull, and it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's gonna argue with me listening too right now. They're gonna be like, but kids are the number one demographic. They gotta play to kids, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but come 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night on a Monday, you know, it shouldn't be geared towards kids. You want to gear something towards kids, bring back your Saturday morning show and show that
Right.
stuff or something. I mean, you have an adult audience, you have an audience that are, marks that grew up watching it and they want to see something more edgier. And
Yeah.
how did you feel if we go back even to the CM Punk pipe bomb? Did you feel that everything was going to turn around from then? Because he that was the first time in a while someone really laid the smackdown on the mic, if you will.
Right. Well, yeah, I thought it would get better, and then it seemed to for just a minute. But I don't know. I think I've noticed it more here lately than I did back then. I think they were still kind of not really sure where to go with it, and now it seems. I don't know. It just seems like the whole product. Maybe it's Triple H and his attitude, or the way things are going. It seems like they're more focused and in line with Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt. The crowd was into it. They were ready to go with it. Just like in Seattle. I think now that they've got more of a focus on doing things. I don't want to say the right way, because they're always trying to do what they want the right way, but I think they're finally picking that ball up and running with it, so that they God, how am I trying to put this? They're focused more on what they need to be doing instead of it seemed like it was kind of jumpy there for a little bit. You had a couple guys that were on top and doing this and that, and the storylines seem more there's more continuity with them now with the SmackDown thing, and you can go from show to show, and everything kind of flows a little bit smoother, it seems like.
Sure. And speaking of that too, I mean, we can get into some title talk right now because they're championships.
Yes.
I mean, they unified the World and WWE Championship. Hopefully, they'll get rid of the World title soon. But now they're talking about unifying the IC Championship and the US belt. Do you think? I mean, it's 50-50 for me because it's good in one idea where you have less belts, and then you have fewer guys going for it. But on the same hand, you have a lot of guys now because you got Raw, you got SmackDown, main event. You have basically enough guys that you could split each show into its own show.
Right.
But you don't have that many championships anymore. And I don't know, how do you feel about that? Is it a good or bad thing that there's fewer championships? And I don't know, do you think it's going to hurt them that there's only, one or two big champions around pretty soon?
To be honest with you, I think that they have gotten away from titles meaning anything. So I don't think it hurts. I, however, find it amusing that they unified the titles, and yet Randy Orton still comes out with both of them. And as far as like the Intercontinental and U.S. titles, I mean, I watched a lot more NWA when I was a kid than I did WWF because, well, actually for the simple fact that, as I got older, like the silly gimmicks didn't really appeal to me as much. And, back in those days, that was the NWA when they hooked up with the UWF, and it was just a more straightforward, stiff style of wrestling. And, you had the Freebirds and Ric Flair and guys like that, the Road Warriors, and they were just tough and beating people up. So, I think I'm a big fan of the U.S. title a lot, and I'd hate to see it go. I know Vince does not like anything NWA/WCW related, but I'd hate to see it go. But I think maybe you mentioned it once about maybe making one of those titles the title that's defended on TV, and maybe get some prestige back in it. I mean, you have to have guys feud for the title and make the feuds good so people care about these titles again. And I don't think that's happened lately because nobody cared about Curtis Axel holding the Intercontinental title, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I think the problem with him is that, I mean, granted, Triple H has done a lot of good things since he started to take over in the back. But I think one of the things, too, is holding on to a championship longer, making it mean something. I mean, we had Punk hold on to the title for over 400 days, and then all of a sudden he loses it to The Rock, who shows up for 3 months, and then it's like you want the titles to mean something, but then you just give it to an actor who comes back to be at Mania, and it's like then that's right there. That's your problem. You can't just throw it to anybody just because he's in a few movies. Granted, I know the whole logistics that it's best for business and all that stuff, but you know what I mean. Like you can't.
right.
People take it two different ways because you have it where one guy, the longer he holds on to it, the more it means something. Okay, but at the same time, the longer that happens, like you just said with Curtis Axel, the more it doesn't mean anything because day after day, he's not defending it. He's not defending it. You know, it's not, I mean, he might have title matches here and there, but you have to really push like this means something.
Yeah.
And when you don't do that, it doesn't mean anything to anybody else, and yet they're not going to care about it. That's I think what's happening is that, I mean, right now the WWE Championship is the biggest thing happening. That, and I think the tag team titles were really big when Goldust and Cody won it, but now they're starting to get lost in the mix too because they've just announced that they're going to be in the Royal Rumble now, and I don't even think they're going to even defend the tag team the titles at the Royal Rumble. And
it's like too, it's on SmackDown they're going to wrestle the Outlaws, and I mean I know they're just coming back for a couple of matches or this and that, but why not have them defend the title there?
I know, and they have to like build it up, and then they don't build up anything. It's just like, okay, you're going to fight him for the title now, but it doesn't mean anything. Like there used to be guys that used to work their way up, then they'd finally win the IC championship, and then they'd work on that, defending it, and then they would go against, and then they don't do that anymore, and
it's a perfect way to get a guy over.
Yeah.
But, I mean, look at all the guys that, from Greg Valentine to Tito Santana, look at matches that those guys had together. And then, the Macho Man and on up to, Bret Hart, HBK, Austin, Owen Hart. I mean, these guys, they got over with that secondary title and it means something. And it showed that these guys were actually ready to step up to a next level, and I don't think that there's a lot of that going on. I think it just kind of gets shuffled. In case in point, Curtis Axel, maybe it's just people didn't connect with him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into a lot of stuff like that too. I'm going to bring up brand separation in a little bit, but I also just want to touch up on a few another title question. I always bring it up in the group on Facebook. That's facebook.com/group/pro-wrestling-marks. But the thought of bringing in back other titles, like for example, to me, the Cruiserweight title. You have guys like Tyson Kidd, Rey Mysterio, Sin Cara. I can name a bunch of others, but you get the point. These guys, they're great. They're athletic. But I will never believe them as being a world heavyweight champion. I'm sorry. I hate Rey Mysterio just for that fact alone. Nobody in any other match hits the second rope unless they're fighting him. If they did it in every other match, I'd believe it. But here's my thing. It's like, not everybody deserves the heavyweight championship, There's guys that are just mid-carders for life. There's guys that are smaller, and that's fine. But the thing is, give them a title. Mid-carders keep the IC belt, maybe, unless they're really big that they can work their way up to the championship. And then the smaller guys, like I just said, Tyson Kidd, Mysterio, etc., make the Cruiserweight title like TNA does with the X Division title. Make that the number one small guy title. And there's nothing wrong about being small or a Cruiserweight. There's guys that are out there that just do stuff other guys can't, and they deserve a title. I feel like these guys will never get recognized as being good because they're trying to compete to be the world heavyweight champion. And think about it. If you put these guys in the Hogan Warrior era and back at WrestleMania 6, they would be a joke. You know what I mean? They'd be the size of the ref. And you know what I mean? Like, granted, Hogan or Warrior can't do half the stuff these guys could do, but I mean, give them their old title. Like, if you want to take away the U.S. title and just keep the IC championship, fine. But Give me a Cruiserweight title because I never want to see Rey Mysterio fight for the WWE Heavyweight Championship. Or you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
to where
Well, when I think of him, I never ever forget whenever he got lawn darted into the side of the truck on Monday Nitro.
Yes.
You know? I mean, but he was great. You know, the matches he had in ECW with Psychosis were, I mean,
yeah, he was great.
Back then they were great,
yeah.
you know. But and it actually is a good point because you know you have guys like in TNA, Austin Aries and Chris Sabin. You know, they're having great matches for the X Division title. Even AJ Styles and hell, Samoa Joe was in there even. You know, and having a Cruiserweight title brings back a lot of the prestige. I mean, instead of these guys just being an opening match that nobody gives a shit about. Sorry.
No, you can curse.
Nobody cares about.
It's okay.
You know, you have these guys go for a title and you know, bring some prestige back to it. It's kind of like a case in point where Jericho in his book said, you know, when he mouthed off to Dean Malenko, and Dean Malenko was terrible on the mic, but he was great in the ring. But he mouthed him until Dean Malenko came back and he said it was one of the biggest pops he'd ever heard, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, guys, people will watch it because they're great in the ring, you know? So it's a great idea to bring back.
I mean, even speaking of other things, I've mentioned this a handful of other times, but you said, like, I mentioned in the group a while ago, too, to where, I mean, Zack Ryder, love him or hate him, the Internet Championship is such a great idea nowadays, because, like, you still got TNA doing the Television Championship, and the thing is, now with the WWE Network, you're pretty much watching wrestling online almost all the time. Why not have that specific, the Internet Championship? I know doesn't sound good right now, but I guarantee you in a few years when everybody's just watching wrestling off their phone or iPad or this and that, it'll make sense. Even bring that back, and even, you know, even have that as the pre-show match sometimes where you defend the Internet Championship because you can only watch the pre-show online kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even one other idea, tell me if you like it or hate it, I was thinking about even having a Legends title. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about Hogan versus Piper. I'm talking about, like, look at Goldust, for example. Granted, he won the Tag Team Championship. He is somebody who has come back. I've never seen a comeback like this, to where, I mean, he's better than what he was 10 years ago. But, I mean, you know, have a belt to where you have guys that aren't past their prime, like Hogan and that, but they're a little bit older, but they're a legend. You could sign them to a Legends contract, and they wrestle legends. That could be one of your gimmicks on the show. You know, at the pay-per-view, we have the Cruiserweight Championship being defended. We have the Legends title being defended. You know what I mean? It can only go against legends. I don't know. That's just me thinking. But what would you think? Would you think of that as silly or something?
No, I mean, because you know, you get into a deal where there's guys that might be a little bit past their prime, and you know, they're not going to, you know, be in all the time, like say a Jericho or Rob Van Dam. You know, guys that can still go, or Goldust, like you say, they can still go, but they're not going to be the focus of the show because of their age, you know, and the amount of time that they've been in the business. So, I mean, that would be a great idea, you know, because they can still go. You know, they're not going to stink up the joint, and people will still care, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just something different than the United States Championship, to where it just, in this day and age, it just doesn't feel like it belongs now and then. I mean, you said you like it, but I mean, for me, like, it doesn't mean anything, especially when they don't showcase it a lot. Then you're like, what does the U.S. Championship even mean anymore? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, like,
you should YouTube some old videos like a Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff back in the mid-'80s going after that belt, and Dusty Rhodes fighting for it. I mean, you'll find some good matches back then for that title.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people listening too are probably going to be like, you know, well, you know, you don't need all the championships. I'll tell you, I'm a person that loves championships. I love the hardcore title. I love the cruiserweight titles. I love the tag team championship. I love titles because it gives them another reason to fight for something. Now, I'm not talking like 20 titles should be out there, but I mean, there should be, just like you get out a drive-through or a fast food place, a small, medium, and large. You need the large for the world championship. You need the medium for the big guys, and then you know what I mean. Like, you need the variety.
Right. Well, there's got to be a pecking order, you know. I mean, it's like you work your way up to where you need to go.
And here's one thing I want to talk to you real quick about too, is that brand separation. granted, it's WWE, all of it. You have Raw, you have SmackDown. Heck, you even have NXT now for the younger guys. I mean, they have so many guys. I feel like a lot of them are getting lost in the mix. How do you feel about them going back to a roster for Raw, a roster for SmackDown, a roster for another show, to where SmackDown is just for the IC Championship. That's that show. Anytime there's a belt defended on it, it's that. Raw is for the World Championship. You know what I mean? But granted, you could have all the champions go on every show, but you know what I mean? Like, if you separated them, I don't know. I just feel like there's too many guys that all I see is Cena on every show or Orton on every show. And, I feel like a lot of guys get pushed in the back to where when they finally get a chance, it's 5 minutes and then that's it.
Right. I'm kind of hit or miss on that one because I liked it at first, and then it got to where I don't think I watched SmackDown for probably a good 3 or 4 years. And they always kind of, since it's a tape show, they always kind of seem to have their top guys never leave Raw. I know they did it a couple of times, like Triple H went like as a show of faith, I think, because I don't know, he was in a backstage feud with somebody back then or whatever, and he said, okay, well, I'll go to the secondary show.
Yeah,
I think I remember reading once, and and it's like there's just the guys that I want that everybody wants to see are going to be on the main live show.
Yeah,
now you do have a 3-hour show, so there's more to do and more to fill. But I've actually watched SmackDown more in the last year than I had in the previous 3 or 4. And I think that has a lot to do with the continuity between the stories. Like they didn't have the 6-man with the Outlaws and Punk last Monday, but they had it on SmackDown on Friday. So I was like, hey, I'm going to check this out. So. Yeah,
I hear you. It is a hit or miss on it too. And then I even missed the draft because the draft was kind of cool. It's like, oh, who's going to get switched? But what you could do now, which is a great idea, and I hope I could trademark it right now, is like for the younger guys coming up, like instead of Xavier Woods like just being thrown on Raw with R-Truth, have another draft to where 5 or 4 guys or whatever, get drafted to a show. Like Xavier Woods gets drafted to Raw. Sami Zayn gets drafted to SmackDown. Like where you bring up the rookies and they get drafted to the show instead of switching. Something like that to where that'd kind of be interesting and cool and spice it up a little bit. But I mean, I don't know, because like if you look at it from TNA where they got one show and Ring of Honor has one show, it's not like a different show every week. I don't know.
Right.
It's hard to say because like even on TNA too, I think they kind of get killed using the same guys over and over sometimes. And
right. Well, and then that's their own fault because they. Like I know they've been releasing some people here lately. Case in point, Wes Briscoe, who I absolutely hated.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't believe the guy. Even I don't care what his pedigree was or where he came from. The guy was god awful, and he never should have been anywhere near the Aces and Eights. But then they'll keep a guy like that on the roster, but then they'll let Festus go.
Yeah.
Doc or whatever whatever you want to call him, Luke Gallows, the big XLG, and. It's like when that guy left, that was the beginning of the end. It's like,
and then, it's a shame too, even for WWE for him. Let's talk Luke Gallows. Vince likes the big guys. You know what I'm saying? He likes, he from what we know or from what we hear in the dirt sheets, because we'll never really know. But you know what I mean? Like, obviously he doesn't like Daniel Bryan, or obviously he doesn't like some of the smaller guys that don't look big. Meanwhile, you have a big guy like Luke Gallows that they get rid of for what? He's a huge guy who's he's a good wrestler, and you throw him to the side because for what? And it's like you complain there's not enough big guys that can wrestle. Meanwhile, there's one guy right there that you let go.
Oh, yeah.
Has a lot of talent. He's a young guy too. He's like late 20s, probably. He's he's still young, but he's huge.
Yeah. Well, and you would think he would have an in, because he's good friends with Punk,
Yeah.
I guess like that didn't work for Colt Cabana too well either, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand completely what you're saying. Like I always thought Mike Knox, whenever he was on ECW, was great. Like whenever they did that thing where he just came out and like pummeled Evan Bourne like week after week, you're making this guy look like a monster, and he's actually can pull it off.
Yep.
Why can't you bring both of these guys back in and this is your monster tag team that you got,
Yeah, and
So,
they're decent wrestlers, and then you have a thing like Vince looks at Ryback, and granted, okay, he looks like a bodybuilder. That doesn't mean he's freaking good in the ring. You know what I mean?
right,
Like when they pushed him too fast to where, oh, granted he has a look, fine, but the guy actually has to know what he's doing. You can't just lift
right,
weights and then automatically become a wrestler. It's an insult to a lot of people, and it's just like that. That's how they screw up. Like everybody liked him when he came out, and then all of a sudden you could see him just messing up here and there, and then it's just
right.
like, well, that's what happens when you rush him because you think he's got the look and he knows what to do, and it's a shame where they let the good guys go and then they keep these guys that suck, and
Yeah.
it's just like, come on, what are you doing?
Well, I think the end for him was whenever Cena got hurt and they kind of hot shotted him into that deal with Punk,
Yep.
and he was nowhere near ready.
Nope.
And then the nail in the coffin was the day after WrestleMania when he turned heel. I mean, it's just been, and they could have done the whole bully thing.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a rip off of Bully Ray, but like honestly, you guys, the WWE has 3 times the viewers that TNA does, so half the crowd's not even going to realize it.
Yeah.
So
And
I mean,
I'm
it could've
surprised.
been great.
Yeah, I'm surprised too with him too, because I heard he was very injury prone to where he'd be getting injured so often that it was like, I'm surprised they even gave him that big of a push in the first place, because he was always hurting his arm or his ankles or something. And if I had to repackage him, he would get the Ultimate Warrior makeover to where give the guy face paint, put those beaded armbands on, or the leg ones, whatever you want to call them. Let him run to the ring. Shake the ropes, pick the guy up, drop him, pin him, and then run out. That's the Ryback I would have liked. He's not good on promos, so there you go. You just have him say gibberish into the mic, give him the Ultimate Warrior treatment. I know you're not a fan of the Warrior going in, but they haven't done that with anybody too, you know what I mean? They haven't given anybody such a crazy character to where they run out, they beat somebody up, and then they run away and away. And that's what the Warrior was a lot, but
Yeah.
now it's just like, I don't know. It's a whole different world out there. It's a whole different world.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they always say, you got to kind of just throw a few things at the wall and see what sticks. And whenever they were running him out and he was just beating up the jobbers, it was, it was kind of like a Goldberg thing. They just came out and beat people up, and then didn't say a whole lot, but they just rushed him a little too quickly, I thought, and now I don't even know if they even care about the guy anymore.
That's it. It's like they give him a chance, see what he can do, and then all of a sudden it's not working, so then he gets stuck and pushed into tag teams and then just lose.
And here is the one thing, though, in that regard, that I think that they jumped the gun a little too quickly on making their decision about how these guys can, put butts in the seats.
Yeah.
Or, like the Daniel Bryan thing. Okay, he did 3 pay-per-views in a row, but is that really enough time for you to gauge how well he's going to do as the champion? I mean, it's like, your best friend HBK was the champion during the worst period of time in WWE history, the lowest drawing champion, him and Nash, so your buddies were the lowest drawing champions ever. So how do you look at Daniel Bryan after 3 months and go, oh, well, no, sorry, we're not going to use you?
That's one of the things I shake my head at, because, I mean, at that time when he was doing the pay-per-views is the same time the NFL started back up.
Right.
And I'm sorry, Vince, but I'll tell you right now, I don't watch a lot of football. I'll watch like the Super Bowl or the main big games, and okay, I'm not one of the percentage, but there's a big percentage out there that just don't watch wrestling. There's a lot of people out there that watch football, and that's probably the number one sport in the world that people watch. And you can't tell me that you're losing ratings because he's your main event right there. You have to see what else is going on in the world, and it's like, look at the fans, look at the crowd last night on Raw. Look at what they did. Everybody I saw online, either Facebook or Twitter, was like, this crowd is weak, this crowd sucks. All of a sudden, Daniel Bryan takes off the Duke the Dumpster outfit, and boom, man, that crowd was livid. And it was just like, hello? Are we not watching the same thing here, or what?
I know, and what boggled my mind a few weeks ago was after the whole Seattle thing, and I understand that he's from Washington, and I get that he was the hometown boy, but after the crowd ruined Triple H's segment,
that
should have been the tell-all right there. I
Yep.
mean, there's no way that he could actually have gotten back in the dressing room and been like, well, that was just stupid. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn him heel in 2 weeks. I just didn't get that.
And the thing about that too is, think about all the legends or all the people that were in that ring. CM Punk, Bret Hart, a lot of people were in that ring besides Daniel Bryan, who have held that belt or both championships. And regardless of hometown or not, that would have probably happened anywhere too. I'll have to agree with you. Like, granted, I really still feel like they're trying to ride that little wave all the way to WrestleMania, to where they can, in my mind, hopefully, it's wishful mark thinking that they would cash in on him maybe winning the championship there, or some marks are talking about him beating the streak or something, to like a crowd of over 80,000 plus fans. I don't know how many in Louisiana down there can hold for this year, but I'm just thinking of this year's WrestleMania we went to with over 80,000, but. Right. Just, I can't imagine like the whole crowd just chanting yes. Like, I hope that's the payoff. I really hope that that's why they haven't done anything with him at all these other pay-per-views, that they're really just saving it for Mania.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it doesn't happen, if they don't give him a title shot at Mania or let him beat the streak, I don't know what else they could give him at WrestleMania, because for the reactions that he gets, they need to give him something. You know what I mean? Like, ugh. It's just,
even if he's not the prototypical man that they want for the job that they want done, being the face or whatever, after the year that he's had and the matches that he had when he was him and Kane and Punk, those guys were like single-handedly keeping Raw entertaining.
Yep.
It's at least like throw the guy a bone and give him that. I mean, if it's the only one, give him that moment to shine. I honestly believe that he's the most over guy in the company right now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's no question about it.
Definitely, and some people probably listening too, and probably, even when we even talked about titles before, where I categorized like Rey Mysterio and others, like you could put Daniel Bryan as being in there for the Cruiserweight Championship. If they brought it back, like, he would definitely be the Cruiserweight champion, but he's also a guy that could take that championship and fight for the World Heavyweight Championship. Like, he's believable. Like, anything he does, like, he's a believable heavyweight contender. Like, he's not just, he could go in there with the biggest of them and fight them. Like, for my Rey Mysterio example, is to where guys just fall and do spots for him because he can't do anything else. But Daniel Bryan can actually do good spots, and it's believable. And I don't know, man. It's a shame. 2014 is going to be a crazy year. I hope the best turns out for him, and I hope we get some rewards for being loyal marks this year, and see something amazing at WrestleMania 30.
Well, I have this deal with him as I would like to not see his last 2 title reigns that lasted a grand total of like 24 hours and 2 minutes be the only time this guy holds the title, And it's, this isn't like this 70s when they gave the title to Tommy Rich for 4 days, the NWA title, and then that was it, because he wasn't good enough. But I hope to see something better out of it this year.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think one thing everybody could probably agree, is that anytime you give him the ball, he will take it and run with it. Because you can go back to NXT, where I forget who kept joking with him that he had no personality. Then they gave him the gimmick with Kane. And I think that's probably when, he kind of really picked up with the whole no's and yeses and stuff. I mean, granted, he probably did a little bit before that, but, they gave him something that was like, all right, let's see what you can do with this.
Yeah.
He gave it to him, he took the ball, and he ran with it. And then, and then they're like, oh, we'll give him the title at SummerSlam for a minute. Look at the crowd explosion. Okay, then we'll take it away and see what happens. If anything, 2013 was a good and shitty year for Daniel Bryan, so I'm hoping for 2014 to actually, like, he paid his dues. I think if anybody paid his dues, I think it was Daniel Bryan this year, he did.
And I've yet to hear, anyone say that he's been backstage complaining about anything, which shows that he's kind of just going with the flow and is a complete loyal soldier, so I mean, that should count for something in my book.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't know, hopefully the voices that be are listening to us, and all the marks out there. Woz, though, I want to wrap it up with you.
All right.
Tell me a little bit more before we get out of here. 2014. Give me a prediction of 2014. Something that, well, if you don't have to predict it, but maybe something that you really want to see happen this year, and then tell me what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years in pro wrestling. Anything that you could see into the future.
This year, I would actually like to see a CM Punk, Daniel Bryan headlining WrestleMania match for the title. That is wishful thinking, but I think somehow Daniel Bryan's going to be involved with it. The next 5-10 years, boy, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that social media would have been taking over and to wrestling the way it has thus far. I foresee us always watching wrestling on a computer now in about 10 years, after this network is going on. I don't know. I wonder if it's going to be house shows or if it's just going to be all basically media product in a few years. So I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an interesting time in the world of being a mark, watching professional wrestling, all that fun stuff. It's still real to us, damn it.
Yes.
Woz, thanks for coming on, man. I'll definitely have you on again.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking to all the marks, though, guys, on Off the Mark. This is your chance to just drop some pipe bombs, shoot the shit with me. I don't care. Anything goes on this show. So, guys, we're going to hear from a lot of marks out there. I want to thank the Woz for joining us tonight. And don't forget, we got Marked Up coming up on Thursday. We got the second annual Mark Awards coming on. And don't forget to check out all of our links. Go to facebook.com/group/pro wrestling marks. Check us out. All of our links are on there. Guys, we will talk to you soon. This is Credo, and we just got off the mark.
Here we go!